Hi team, welcome to your movement flow video. Today we're going to focus on the inside of the thigh bit, your adductors. We're going to start off just moving nice and fluid. You can actually hold onto a wall. Just going to get a tiny bit of motion to the inside of the thigh. Kind of a classic dynamic warm up. Very good, both sides. As you get a bit warm, we can open up a little further. We're going to need a wall. I've got a couple of yoga blocks, and I think they're going to be useful if you are tight in the inside of the thigh today. So I'm going to use the wall. We're going to try and scooch so our bum is relatively close to the wall, and then we're going to come up and we're going to put our legs out. I know it's a bit of a funny position, and if you're doing this in the gym, you might get some strange looks, but this is one of the best ways I've found to allow people to get into the position without it being too threatening. So obviously the wall's going to take some of our body weight off and allow us to kind of relax into this position a bit. Once we feel a bit more comfortable, we can actually use some contract relax techniques. We can try and actually squeeze a bit and try to push into the wall slightly, and then breathe in. As we breathe out, see you just shimmy those legs a little bit further out. It should never be to a point which actually is too painful. You should get to a point where I say roughly a 6 out of 10 in terms of discomfort. If it's getting up to an 8, it's definitely too much, and your body's going to kind of fight that position. So I'm not going to stay here for too long. If you need to stay here a bit longer, you can just pause the video. We're just going to play in this position. You can have a little jiggle around. You can move your arms overhead and create a little bit of movement. You can kind of move to one side, move to the other side, create a little bit of rotation. But ultimately, if you just sit here, squeeze the legs a little bit to try and get a little bit active, and then relax and just try and shimmy the legs a little further out. This will be a nice way to get a bit more passive range into a position that lots of people struggle with. It's a position I struggle with the most, so when you see me go through some of these positions, they won't look in any way kind of super easy or ideal. We're going to come into kind of half kneeling stretches. So we're going to start off just by trying to go straight down. So we're going to work into this frontal plane, side to side. This leg's going to be straight, and we're just crunching. Imagine between two panes of glass, you're literally just going to crunch down. You're quite active, pushing down through that foot and feeling that stretch on the inside of the thigh. After you've done 10, 15, 20 or so, we're going to rotate away down. So IQ, this elbow is going to come down towards the ground without flexing through the spine, okay? So we're just going to come down and across. So we're going to rotate into this hip, creating a slightly different stretching into the inside of the thigh, working through this rotation, this transverse plane. So we're trying to get multiple planes of motion into kind of that joint and kind of that muscle. Same thing, 10, 15, 20 or so. Then we're going to put our hands on the hips, and we're going to push our bum back and forward. So I'll show you from the side. You're kind of doing like a deadlifty RDL type position. So we're working in that sagittal plane now, going forwards and backwards. We're kind of pressing actively through that leg and coming forward and back. We're trying not to rotate that way. We're trying to stay straight forward and back. So I'm not coming like this. I'm trying to imagine I'm going straight forward, pushing that bum back, and then coming up and through, squeezing that hip a little bit at the top, down and back, down and back. Same thing, if you've got a bit more time, spend a bit longer. We'll do the other side. Same side, holds on, down towards, build it in. Might take a bit of time for this to feel a bit loose, but just don't go too crazy at the start. Allow yourself to warm up into it. And just feel that nice kind of like active stretch. And you're kind of gently finding that discomfort, coming away from it, discomfort, coming away from it. We're going to come across and away, rotating. Don't yank the neck. It's just hair there to help guide us down towards the bottom corner into this slight rotation pattern. One of these will probably feel a bit more tighter than the other ones. If that's the case, you might want to spend a bit more time on that side. Same thing, if one side feels a bit tighter, you might want to do an extra round there or a few extra reps there. Great, hand on the hip, same thing, pushing that bum back and forward. My left side has always been a bit tighter in my posterior chain generally, but definitely into this adductor through, just building it in. If you have any kind of knee issues, you can just prop something standing with your foot on the box actually. If you find this position too tight, if you stand, put your foot on a box or a step, that works really, really well. Cool, we're going to put this into a slightly broader pattern. So we're going to come inside of the knees, and then touching the ground, and the soles of the feet are going to come together. From there, we're going to drive our hips towards the ground and just arch up gently. You'll find kind of the best position for you. I don't want to move too far off the screen, but inside of the thighs, knee into the ground, driving through, and you can kind of move back and move into it, or you can kind of stay here. I like to breathe out and look over each shoulder, so you're just creating a little bit of movement. If you squeeze the glutes slightly, if you get any lower back pain, that protect it a little bit, but otherwise just kind of ease into it, back off a little, and ease through. If you want to take a full break, you can kind of go to child's pose. It's quite nice if you've got any lower back tightness or aching, and then you can just slide back into it. If this is actually too aggressive for you, you can come down onto the elbows. That will take some of the angle away from the spine especially. Otherwise you can come up. If that's easy, just shift your hands further back, or even prop yourselves onto some bricks. You get a little more force, you drive those hips towards the ground a little more. Cool, we're going to go into the pancake position. This is probably one of my most challenging positions, so the demonstration won't be the best in terms of maybe what you might be able to do in this ideal setting. So in a pancake position, how much you can see my spine a bit better, we're just going to stay as wide as possible as feels comfortable. You can put things underneath your knees to kind of assist you, and we're just going to hinge forward. The brick, sitting on the brick, is going to help with our pelvis being tilted. A lot of people, I think, tug and we get into this position here, which isn't a bad position, but what we want to try and do is have multiple positions for our hips in different positions. So I'm going to try and tuck the other way and reach, and if you need to, you can kind of grab another brick, and that will kind of help in terms of that position to try and play around with it. You can go passive and go longer and flex the spine, and you can go a little more active and try and extend that lumbar spine in particular, and not allow it to kind of dump and flex into that position. So work through both, but whatever feels challenging, just kind of stay there, feel it out a bit. Same thing here, you can kind of move in and out of the position. We're just trying to think, can we control that pelvis and tip over that position wherever you may be. Like I said, this is a really tough position for me. I can sit higher onto multiple bricks or sit onto a pad or a step. You might feel much more comfortable, and at the same time, if you need to, you can bend those knees slightly and work through that position if that feels better with a slightly bent knee too. After that, we're going to get to some standing positions and work through, I guess, a bit more integrated Canadian chain stuff. So we're going to go into a Cossack position, we're going to come down. If this is already tight for you, you might just stay here. You might want to use the bricks to kind of help yourself. We're trying to work through the inside of that thigh, as well as obviously squatting or lunging into that hip. In an ideal scenario, you'll be able to come down and actually just lift that leg up. If you keep it flat, the tension will be more. If you lift it up, you might be able to sit that bum a bit closer towards the floor. And we can sit here, we can put our hands down to get some support. We can go much higher if we need to. We're just trying to get this nice active stretch all the way through. From there, we're going to come round and go into the other side. Same thing, that heel can come up. If this heel comes up, that's okay. If you want a heel elevation, that's okay. If you can keep it flat, great. But if not, just make sure you're getting this nice active stretch through this side. We can play around with these positions, but as long as you feel roughly comfortable. I've had multiple kind of knee issues, so I have to kind of be careful with my knee coming in and out of it. So if you need to use your hands, it's absolutely fine. We can work on a bit of transition. As we come through, we can stay nice and low, trying to get all the way through that hip and that knee before sliding in, then coming back up, holding, reaching, taking off, leaning back, leaning forwards. Doesn't matter too much, as long as we're getting that nice position, a nice stretch, and trying to get as deep in this hip as possible. Come all the way around, nice and slow, and through. We're just going to finish off with another squat pattern, active through the inner legs. We're going to go into a nice sumo squat or a goddess position. You can go as wide and as toes out as you feel comfortable. The wider the toes out you go, the more it will put that stress on. We're trying to keep the knees tracking over the toes so they're not kind of diving forwards. And we're just going to sit and hold for 3 to 5 seconds, and then we're going to come out. Like I said, you can play the position, you can come a bit narrower, absolutely fine. We'll target or hit a slightly different part of your hips and glutes. We're just going to play around. This will be a great little prep for any squat work or any hinge work that's going to lengthen out those adductors and get them nice and active. Same thing, you can get a bit deeper, go a bit deeper. Make sure you can control it. Nothing too uncomfortable. Right, I'm going to do a couple more. Last one we'll hold. If you want to hold, take off some of the pressure, you can push your hands into your knees. It takes out some of the kind of body weight you're taking on. Maybe rock from side to side. And rest. Good. I hope you found today useful. Let me know if you have any questions.